Hello and welcome back to Reese Rambles, my weekly podcast all about the latest comings and goings, movings and shakings, and all the rest of it in the worlds of vintage and retro computing and gaming. I hope you're all doing well, and indeed, welcome to another weekend. The first weekend of November, if you can believe it. Winter is rapidly approaching and it's getting very cold and dark and miserable here in the UK, even more so than usual. I know, it's quite a difficult concept to get to grips with, but anyway, I hope you're all doing well, and I don't have a show and tell for you this week. I don't have an unboxing like last week's Cefucom software unboxing, which seemed to go down very well, so thank you for all of your feedback and your response to that. So we'll just dive in with the first story. Now, this is to do with something that I announced back in May. Now, I can't take the credit for this. This wasn't my idea. This was actually the brainchild of Boris Kretzinger, who is quite a big name in the Atari world, publishes a few different magazines to do with Atari stuff. And he has also written a very excellent and very in-depth book called Clipped Claws, which is the story of the Atari Jaguar. Well worth checking out. And this is all linked from this announcement video back in May. Now, I was asked to be a judge for this competition. Part of what you can actually win as part of JagJam is to actually get your game physically published with Songbird Productions. And you might think, but Reese, you haven't really done much to kind of keep us updated since May in the past 6 months. And I must admit that I haven't. And the reason for that, or at least a big part of the reason for that, is because the people who've actually entered this and have been developing games for JagJam have played their cards very close to their chests. And it's only in the past week or so that we've actually started to see the entries come in. People being very secretive and stuff, which, hey, I guess it is what it is. And the deadline was the 31st of October, which was yesterday at the time of recording this. And I am very pleased, very, very pleased indeed to report that we have had 5 entries for this, which is really good for a platform like the Atari Jaguar, which, all right, it does have a very good homebrew scene, but, I think that's a very good turnout. So thank you, everyone, for all of your entries for JagJam 2024. We've had Shapeshooter 2000 by SJC, and we'll just have a quick look at this. So it's a proper fully 3D game. There is a demo video on here, which you can have a look at if you like. And it's like is it fair to compare it to other existing games? Geometry Wars, stuff like that, if you remember that from the Xbox, maybe that kind of thing. But it's a fully 3D asteroids type game, I guess. You can go and check out all of these, of course, download them and play them as well. Part of the requirements for the competition was that you had to make a downloadable version of the game available. So that was the first entry. The second one is Operation Follow Through Prologue by Cobra, and this is a prologue for the game Operation Follow Through for the Atari Jaguar. And let's have a look at this one, because look at this. This is like, it's a shooter. It's a first-person type shooter game. I guess I haven't actually played any of these yet, but looking at the screenshots, this is quite impressive, isn't it? This is a really good-looking game. So very much looking forward to getting my hands on that one and testing that and judging it. As you can see, this one was submitted 29 minutes before the deadline. What else do we have? We have Go Lucky by PPS Berlin, and this is a board game for the Atari Jaguar. And if we just have a look at this one, this was one of the earlier entries. But puzzle game, board game type thing, of course. Hours of fun. So looking forward to judging that one as well. That was actually the first entry, according to Boris. So thank you for that one. We'll go through. The next one is Witch by Canada FR, and the description is just Atari Jaguar game. I wonder what it could be. Well, we click through. And look at this. It's like a horizontal shooter type game. We've got a witch on a broomstick flying along. And looks like a lot of fun. And again, this one was submitted 21 minutes before the deadline. We've got a boss here that's like a big skull with like snakes coming out of its mouth, something like that. So that looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. Might do a little video roundup of these separately, actually. And finally, the fifth and final entry is called Where Is It? And that's from Rico59. And if we just click through and have a look at this one, have a look at the screenshots. Again, this is it's like a puzzle type game, but it's got some really nice sprite artwork going on here, some really nice graphics work and stuff, which is really cool. And what's this? We've got some intermission story type screens as well to help immerse ourselves in the Where Is It universe. And again, like I say, some nice graphics in this. It looks like they've put a lot of work into it. And this one was submitted 16 minutes before the deadline. So yeah, as you can see, that's the reason why I haven't really had much to report on, because it seems these Atari Jaguar developers are all quite secretive people, like to work in secret and not give their precious ideas away. But yeah, every single one of those looks like it's going to be a good game in its own right. Of course, a good range of stuff, a good good mix of genres and things. Very much looking forward to judging those games. So thank you everyone for your entries for JagJam 2024. Of course, I will be talking to Boris and to Songbird about our winner. There are multiple judging criteria that we need to take into account. And I will keep you updated on that one. So watch this space and we'll hopefully be able to determine a worthy winner. And while we are on the subject of homebrew, I thought I would just let you know about another little homebrew release from this week. It's not connected to me in any way whatsoever this time, and in fact I haven't even tried it yet, but I've seen it reported in a few places and the feedback from it actually seems quite good. So I'm looking forward to checking this one out. And this is on another of my favourite consoles, one that I did actually own as a kid. In fact, it was the very first console that I owned, and probably one of my favourites of all time, I think it's fair to say. One that's not had a mention for a few episodes yet, so I'm very pleased to bring it out once more. This is the Game Boy. In fact, this is my FPGBC, which is an FPGA-based Game Boy Color, which I built on my second channel quite a while back. No, they didn't sponsor that video. I paid all my own money for this, and it's one of my favourite things that I own. This goes on holidays and trips and things with me, and I do have a holiday coming up in the near future, which is why I've got this down off the shelf, because as soon as I finish recording, this is going straight into the bag, and I have quite a long plane journey where I'm hopefully going to be catching up on some Game Boy stuff. But yeah, one of my favourite games when I was a kid, the game that came with my Game Boy, in fact, the only game I had for, I think, a few days at least, on around Christmas time, before I spent my Christmas money on a couple of other games for it, was the original Super Mario Brothers, or at least the Game Boy release of Super Mario Brothers. Let's get into this. So this is somebody going by the name of Myco27 or Miko27 over on Twitter, and the tweet reads as such: I've spent the last 5 months learning Game Boy homebrew and just finished making a remake, in brackets demake, of the OG Super Mario Brothers for the Game Boy Color. It has all the original stages, plus 8 new custom worlds, new themes, a new power-up, and custom bosses. So this isn't a ROM hack, this isn't a modified version of Super Mario Brothers. Of course, Nintendo did release Super Mario Brothers Deluxe on the Game Boy Color, which was a color version of that game, as you might expect. No, this is a complete remake from the ground up of the game, which adds a load of extra stuff. Like he says, those new custom worlds, some new themes, new power-up, and custom bosses. And there is actually a video here of this in action, which Miko has warned does contain some spoilers. And it looks pretty good. It's got some new animations and things, which, you know, I think is all kind of in the spirit and in keeping with the original. So this video that we're watching here is just showing the kind of the very first world. But if we skip ahead just a little bit, then actually some of this new content, which is all looking rather snazzy. I mean, look at that. That's Yoshi there. You can actually ride him in one of these worlds, which wasn't in the original Game Boy version of Super Mario Brothers. We've got these vines that we can climb. It all looks rather good. It all looks rather professional. So I am very much looking forward to giving this a go. Like I say, it does seem to have had some good feedback from what I've seen on the internet. I might even check it out this weekend. This isn't a personal endorsement. I haven't actually played it yet, but it came up on my radar and I thought, hey, if you've got a Game Boy Color and a flash cart, or indeed the Mysticore or an emulator or whatever else, this might be fun to check out. So yeah, this is the remake of Super Mario Brothers 1. Although it doesn't actually seem to have a name. You should have come up with a name for this. You know, market it a bit better. I think it's deserving of that. Anyway, that's that. Let's get on with the next story. Okay, let's get serious for a moment, because this is an update on the SuperSEGA console, and it's something that I used to rave about in these rambles, something that I was very, very keen to succeed, and I was fully on board with it, and it looked like a really great project, if not a bit suspicious. And it's basically an FPGA-based console that supports your Master System, Genesis/Mega Drive games, Saturn games, and Dreamcast games, which is the real dream for an FPGA-based system, because, of course, the Dreamcast was a quite late and quite complex console, which so far has eluded the FPGA world. It's not supported by Mister or any of those other projects as yet. Of course, one day it inevitably will be. But this looked like it was going to be the very first FPGA-based project to support the Dreamcast, which is very exciting. And also, it seemed to be officially endorsed by Sega somehow. You know, they were using the Sega logo and branding and connections to some of their other IPs and stuff, even though there was never any kind of official announcement. And when I reported on this in my rambles, I actually had a few comments from people telling me, you know, that be very wary of this project. Some of the people connected with this have connections to previous scams and things. None of it is what it seems, and you know, just kind of be very careful. And I actually stopped reporting on it because I thought, well, you know, I don't want to send people towards a project that's going to end up being a scam. But I also didn't want to put that information out there because there didn't really seem to be a lot of evidence behind those kind of accusations either. So I thought, you know what, I'll leave it, I'll ignore it. But this week, there has been quite a big development, and I finally want to talk about this. Now, this isn't me jumping into drama or propagating any of this stuff. I just feel like I should report on this story because this is something I've covered in the past, and it seems like a very big development that's probably quite important to a lot of people out there like me who were excited about this project. So this is a story over on timeextension.com. Of course, a lot of different places have covered this. But essentially, the Super Sega team have tried to address these concerns this week by releasing a video of the console in action. And this video has actually raised a lot of questions and a lot of concerns from people. So the headline here is, "The project is a complete scam. The internet isn't convinced by the Super Sega FPGA console." And the subheading for this is, "Do not give these people any money." Now, these comments are taken from YouTube comments. Now, I should say that if you actually go and check that demo video, you probably won't find any negative comments because even though a lot of them have been posted, they've all mysteriously started disappearing, at least according to this story. So, yeah, the intro to the story just goes on basically like I just said, that they were very excited about it, and now this has come out and they feel their duty to report it, which is very good of them. But the one thing that I wanted to draw attention to was a list of bullet points from one of those YouTube comments that points out all of the issues with this demo video, and there are quite a lot of them. So apparently there's, on this PCB, which I must admit, I have designed PCBs in the past, but nothing as kind of modern and as complex as this. But I agree, it does look very bare for what it supposedly is. But yeah, this list of bullet points here. So there's no VRM circuitry for the power rails, so the voltage regulation circuitry. The routing of the traces that connect to the ceramic caps are senseless, which you can actually see here in this kind of thumbnail for this video. And yeah, it doesn't really seem to make any sense, does it? We've got no decoupling caps around or below the chips, which is mandatory. Absolutely. The RAM is too far away from the CPU and FPGA, which will ruin your signal integrity. And this is something that we have found with the Mister project, of course. The actual length of the traces in the RAM modules, they were causing problems with the Sega Saturn core. So for the Dreamcast, it's going to be incredibly sensitive, and to have the RAM on the opposite end of the board from the FPGA is just madness. Why would you design it that way? No voltage shifting circuitry for the 5-volt cartridge slots. No DACs, digital to analog converters for the analog out. No HDMI transmitter or filter circuitry. So this thing has an HDMI socket on it, which... it says here actually, solder bridges on the HDMI port where TV is connected to. So it has an HDMI connector on it, but it doesn't actually seem to be connected to anything. No passive filters anywhere, which you would expect on something like this with analog circuitry. The orientation of the power switch, and many more red flags. Even for a mock-up, this is bad. And then there's a tweet here from Electron Ash, who is someone I've been following for a very long time, definitely knows his stuff. Let's play, see if you can spot how many scammy issues there are with this video. So exaggerated movements every time a cart was plugged in, each cart removed, blown into and reinserted, clear pressing of a joypad button each time, and jump cuts. And to be fair, the Super Sega team did try to address the jump cut thing by releasing a supposedly unedited version of the video. But that obviously that doesn't address any of the other issues with the kind of design of the board or anything being completely... it's looking completely infeasible, I guess is the word. So there we go. There's some more comments here. There's one from Atari Age that basically says this PCB is not running any games, cannot run a single game. It's missing everything. No power supplies to run the FPGA. There's no RAM. The RAM that is plugged in isn't connected to the FPGA and too far away. no HDMI driver chip, anything like that. Everything is missing that is required to make it work. So this is just me reporting on this story and what people have been saying about this project, and just doing my due diligence, I guess, as someone who has reported this in the past. So there we go. That's the latest on the Super Sega project. I would say be very wary about giving these people any money. They were taking pre-orders for, I think it was €3. You'd think if they were going to scam people out of money, they'd try to scam them out of more than that. But I suppose €3 is the kind of amount that a lot of people would just be, they'd spend it and forget about it, and it kind of, they guess it means they're more likely to get away with it. I don't know, but whole thing is looking very dubious at the moment. So yeah, tread carefully. Some big video game preservation news next, and I'm afraid this isn't a positive story either, but there we go. So this concerns the Video Game History Foundation and the DMCA, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, which of course technically is a US law and shouldn't affect the rest of us, but in reality it does. It rules the roost over on YouTube, and of course all of the big kind of preservation efforts like the Internet Archive and stuff like that are based in the US as well, so they are subject to US law. Basically has become the law of the internet. But yeah, there we go. And there has been, let's go to the Video Game History Foundation website and check out this story. There has been a campaign, a petition from the Video Game History Foundation and the SPN, the Software Preservation Network, to the US Copyright Office to try to get an exemption for games specifically, and specifically older games. From the DMCA. So places like libraries can make these games available for people to play, so they can learn about the history of gaming and stuff. And the specific part of the DMCA that applies to this is Section 1201, apparently, which is the anti-circumvention rules, which is to do with circumventing copyright protections on things. So a lot of these older games, like the Super Nintendo games and even the Game Boy, for example, the Genesis, the Mega Drive, that kind of era of consoles, had anti-copyright circumvention measures built into their cartridges. So whether that was in the form of displaying a logo on the screen or whatever else. And to be able to play those games on anything other than the original hardware, which of course is becoming rarer and rarer and more valuable nowadays. So if you want to play any of these games in an emulator or on Mister or anything like that, you have to circumvent that protection to be able to play them. And that's technically against the law, even on these very old games, even on 30-year-old games. So they were quite rightly, and very much in favour of this, trying to get an exemption for libraries specifically and archive services. So yeah, for the past 3 years, the Video Game History Foundation has been supporting the Software Preservation Network on a petition to allow libraries and archives to remotely share digital access to out-of-print video games in their collections. And that's the important part here, out of print. We're not talking about stuff that's currently available to buy. Under the current anti-circumvention rules in Section 1201 of the DMCA, libraries and archives are unable to break copy protection on games in order to make them remotely accessible to researchers. While we are disappointed by the Copyright Office's decision, we have no regrets about going through this process. Over the last 3 years, working on a petition has helped us generate important research, notably our survey of the video game reissue market in the United States report, which proved, and this is quite the statistic, that around 87% of video games released in the US before 2010 remain out of print. So it's impossible to buy these games in any form. 87% of them pre-2010 games. Our combined efforts with SPN have raised significant public awareness of these issues and have already made an impact throughout the game industry and preservation communities. Unfortunately, lobbying efforts by rights holder groups continue to hold back progress. During our hearing with the Copyright Office, the Entertainment Software Association declared that they would never support remote game access for research purposes under any conditions. The game industry's absolutist position, which the ESA's own members have declined to go on the record to support, forces researchers to explore extra legal methods to access the vast majority of out-of-print video games that are otherwise unavailable. And it says here, we're not done fighting here. We will continue our advocacy for greater access and legal allowances for video game preservation and working with members of the game industry to increase internal awareness around these issues. We encourage members of the game industry who are disappointed by the Copyright Office's decision to ask their leadership to push for greater support for the work of libraries and archives within their industry groups. So yes, unfortunately, those 87% of games, which pre-2010 games, which are out of print and completely inaccessible without breaking the copyright protection, which is it's a technicality. It's not a a technical issue. It's a legal technicality, and I'm sure we're all on board with this. Video games, they're art. They're an important part of our cultural history. It's, the biggest entertainment industry in the world. And if you want to watch old movies or read old books or, anything like that, you can do that in various ways, perfectly legally, due to various exemptions in various copyright laws. And yet, those laws don't apply to games. And I don't think that makes any sense. And, I think it's very laudable that organisations like the Video Game History Foundation and the Software Preservation Network are fighting the good fight and trying to make this possible, and it's something that I can only support. So hopefully this is just a temporary setback because, like I say, I think it's important. So just before we dive into our regular Video of the Week feature, I thought I'd talk a little bit about how my videos are doing over on my main channel, Control-Alt-Reese, because, of course, this is the 8th week in a row in which I have released a video. Pretty incredible stuff, and some of those videos are going down incredibly well. So there are two in particular that I want to talk about, and I'm sure you can probably immediately guess what one of those is, because I talked about it last week as well. Let's dive straight into this. So this is my Cefucom 21 video. This, of course, is that English language teaching computer from Japan that I just randomly happened across and bought on one of the Japanese auction sites, and it's turned into a whole rabbit hole. So as you can see here, if you are watching this on YouTube, but if you are listening to this on the podcast platforms, I will also explain for you. Views are 6.1 times higher than usual on this video. It's had 123,000 views, which it says is 103 more than usual in 2 weeks. This is the most popular video on my channel, full stop. Now, if you've been following my channel for a very long time, you'll probably remember the whole solar fiasco, or you will at least have heard of it, when I made a video about solar panels, which got 800,000 views in, what was it, like literally a couple of weeks. And that was very, very bad. It attracted a lot of negative attention. It attracted a lot of people who weren't interested in retro computing stuff at all. And in the end, I decided to just delete that video, which was very unfortunate. So I guess technically that one does hold the crown of being the most popular video on my channel. But this is the most popular one that is currently live, and it's fully on topic for my channel. And it's a video that I'm very pleased with and very proud of. So very cool to have it doing so well. I'm really pleased with the way this has turned out. And it's attracted a few thousand new subscribers. It says 1,900 here, but my overall subscriber growth has been getting on for like 5,000 since this went out, which I think is at least an indirect result of this. So thank you to everyone who has watched this video and who has expressed an interest in it. And as a result of that, I went out and I bought the software for it, which you saw me unbox on last week's Ramble. And I have done an update video as well. So the update video went out earlier today. It went out first thing this morning. Views are 2.1 times higher than usual. So this has 4,500 already, which is apparently 2,400 more than usual. And you can see from the graph here that this one's started to go to the moon as well. Of course, I don't just do this to chase views and chase stats and that kind of thing. It's a very in-depth update. It covers quite a lot of stuff, shows the machine in action, which I couldn't do in part one, and explains how all the software and stuff works. There's also a lot of really good feedback and kind of information from actual users of the Cefucom in there, and people that know a bit more than I do about systems architecture and memory and stuff like that. So I thought it was very worthwhile putting that update out there, and the early feedback seems to agree. So really cool to see that doing well as well. And of course, it's also a massive incentive for me to actually go out and try to get this thing fixed and fully working, and then try to find a museum that would be interested in it. I mean, of course, there's the Computer Museum down in Cambridge. Tony, Here Be Dragons, who I've been working with on this thing, is quite closely associated with that museum. So if it was the kind of thing that they would put out on display and actually let people kind of use, then I'd be very happy for it to go to them. But of course, I have contacts at various other museums and stuff. So that is kind of the longer term plan for it. But of course, I need to make sure it's 100% working and documented and kind of bulletproof before I do that. Because otherwise, it's just a massive waste of time, and understandably, with these museums, they're kind of lacking in manpower and stuff. First sign of trouble, it probably end up going into storage, never to be seen again, which would be a massive shame. So that's kind of on my mind, and that's kind of the big motivator for me to actually get this thing finished and get it properly sorted. That and the emulation effort, of course. I reported in this second update video that somebody going by the name of Perno, excellent name by the way, had been in touch and that they developed emulators in the past for similar systems, and that they're actually using my ROM dumps from that first video to make an emulator for this system, which is fantastic for such a rare system to actually be properly emulated. And of course now I have all the software and stuff, so I can kind of dump all of that and make sure that that's available for it as well. So really cool project. This kind of a really big meaty project for my channel, especially as the whole thing just kind of started on a whim of me seeing something listed on a random auction site and thinking, what's this? So that's kind of the best part of it, the fact that not only is it a really cool and interesting project, but that also so many other people are kind of on board with what I'm doing with this as well. So cool to see, and yeah, wanted to report on that, and also to thank everyone for watching and for all of your positive feedback on the project. I'm very much enjoying it. And so onwards and upwards to our video of the week feature. No, it's not just a clever name. This is a video that I've seen in the past week that has inspired, enlightened, or entertained me, or indeed all of the above. And this week's is actually a video this time, so a bit of a return to form. It's not a live stream. It's not a channel. It's an actual video that I sat and watched and thought, this is quite amusing, something that I really wasn't aware of at the time. So this requires us to cast our minds back 15 years to 2009. I know, 2009 was 15 years ago. How crazy is that? But it was also the year that Windows 7 was released. And this video over on Michael MJD's channel is all about the Windows 7 launch, and specifically something very weird that Microsoft did as part of that launch. So this is, the title of the video is 15 Years of Windows 7, Exploring the Bizarre House Party Pack. So what Microsoft actually did to celebrate the launch of Windows 7 is you could apply online to host your own Windows 7 house party in your own house. And they would give you like a pack of party supplies that were all Windows 7 themed. And you also got a free copy of Windows 7 Ultimate, which was in a special box, a special black edition that was actually signed by Steve Ballmer himself. And obviously the usual party supplies. You got like posters and all the rest of it. It's all covered in the video. But quite an amusing part of this was that there were guides for activities that you could do at these parties, which Michael does cover in this video. Well worth having a look at this. And he has actually found the original guides and just go through them and point out some of the more absurd things in them. So yeah, you could invite people to your house, you could install Windows 7 on your computer, and you could show it off to all of your friends. You can have a Windows 7 themed party with activities and games, and there's a jigsaw, oddly enough. And then there was basically a presentation that you could do, advertising all of the fantastic features of Windows 7 to your friends. The whole thing is utterly bizarre, and I love it. It's such a good story. This completely passed me by at the time. I guess this just wasn't a thing here in the UK. But yeah, and there are actually some people commenting underneath this video saying that they actually hosted these parties themselves back in the day as well. So they're quite amusing to read. But yeah, the Windows 7 Ultimate Signature Edition and the Windows 7 House Party Pack. Really funny story. And I think it's well worth a look. So that's a video from Michael MJD. It's only 18 minutes long, and as you might expect from him, it's very well edited and quite entertaining, and I think well worth checking out. So that's my video of the week. Links, of course, down in the description, along with all the other stories covered in this week's Ramble. And so that is that. So thank you ever so much for joining me for this week's Ramble. I hope you have a wonderful weekend ahead of you. And of course, I will be back in the same time and the same place next week. And again, I think a big thank you is due to everyone who's checked out those Cefucom 21 videos. If you haven't checked out part 2, please do. There's a load of interesting information in there, and you actually get to see it working for the first time, which is very cool. I was really excited when I actually managed to get it booted up and work out what all those different menu options and things were. And on that note, I have this is basically the start of part 3, I think. I was asked by Perno, this didn't make it into the part 2 video because it was all a bit up in the air, so I decided to just not include it. But yeah, I was asked by Perno to remove the character ROM, which is this NEC D2332C chip, and this is a very awkward chip to try to dump. I have since discovered. But I am talking to a couple of people who have successfully dumped these chips before, and that means that he will have the character set available for the new emulator as well. So cool to be a part of that project. So that's my job once I've finished getting this all edited and uploaded. So I suppose I should probably go and get on with that. Thanks once again for joining me, and that's all I have. So, yeah, bye.